Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I wish I could speak in Turkish. It would be much better and much comfortable. But since this is the pace to speak in English, so I should speak in English. Otherwise, I am fluent more in Turkish. All right. So you see, I will keep this picture. The picture is actually from a Dershanes, a spiritual gathering of the Nur community in the area. Actually, it is a walking distance. So we are grateful to Nevzat Yildirim, his courtesy. My whole argument, my whole proposal is that in practice, the Nur community regards the gatherings in the Dershanes as a form of jihad. Okay, this is the project, and actually this is also part of my dissertation, doctoral work, and I hope I will be able to relate it. So just briefly about the context, if you look at the Muslim societies, their experience of modernity and secularism has been very painful. And in most cases, it was not an organic process. If you look at Egypt, if you look at Afghanistan, if you look at Iran, usually it is from top down, and people were enforced to follow a form of ideology or form of life. And actually, Turkey is no exception. If you look at, in the early years of the Republic, you will see almost all institutions that were providing spirituality and Islamic education, they were shut down, right? Remember the Sufi lodges, Tekke and Zawiyas. Remember madrasas. Remember actually the law, the Sharia law was dismantled in Turkey. All of a sudden, you have these institutions, you have the people, scholars, who are providing spirituality and education. Now they are gone, right? So then what people do, what kind of resources and form of spirituality they were looking for, how they survived. At the end, Turkey is, where you can stay, just from the whole, you see it is a very religiously vibrant society, but without these institutions. So it is a very interesting case, actually. And there are a few reasons. Why this study is relevant, why it is important. There are several reasons. One of them is, if you look at the Muslim society's response to the challenge of secularism and modernity, in most cases you see, political Islam dominates the narrative, that it is a dominant discourse, Islamic movements. And actually, according to Pew Research Center, this is an America-based research center, even today, a significant numbers of Muslims, they believe that Islam should play an important role in politics. So it is no surprise, therefore, that Islamic parties have become an important dynamic of politics in many Muslim societies. They face challenges, but actually, they also receive lots of support. The second reason is, and again today, majority of Muslims, they believe the Sharia, the Islamic law, should be part of the land, that we should be ruled according to the Sharia. And it seems to them, for the vast majority of Muslims, in order to live a life in accordance with God's will, a Muslim needs to live in a place ruled according to the Sharia. So in order to be a pious Muslim, to follow taqwa, piety, then you need to follow you need to be in a place where there is Sharia. And actually, for example, there are statistics, again, recent statistics. While the support for Sharia among Muslims varies from region to region, in South Asia, for example, the median support is 84%. People, they want to be followed, ruled according to Sharia. But in the new context of Turkey, somehow it seems that Nursi disregards these positions or these perceptions. For example, as you know, there are two major bodies of Sharia, Islamic law. One is mu'amalat, right, transactions, and the other one is ibadat, the acts of worship. This is actually well put by Sharif Mardin, who recently passed away. He says, he notes, in contrast to Al-Ghazali, Nursi did not dwell much on the areas of Islamic social relations and forms of worship, but studies the areas that would assist Muslims in understanding their religion. So unlike actually Al-Ghazali, for example, and also many Islamic societies who responded in a form of political Islam, Nursi did not focus too much on this two major forms of Sharia, which are mu'amalat and ibadat, right? So he draws a different map. Mainly through both individual and communal readings of the Risale in the Dershanes. So I assume many of you are familiar with Dershanes. Basically, usually we see that the madrasa is also used. But what we mean actually, when in the evenings, usually during the weekends, the readers of the Risale, they come together in a house, basically in a house, and they read Risale, the works of Badi'u Zaman, collectively, right? But it seems, there is a little bit doubt that the Nur community believed the best response to these challenges in the secular context without institution is through readings. And this is very interesting, and we don't see in many parts of the Muslim community. Dealing with issues concerning faith, concerning Iman, became their daily jihad. So basically for a reader of the Risale, your daily jihad is to read the Risale. So again, of course, because of this position, this is sometimes regarded as a pacifist, as a pacifist reaction, that because of that they, in a way, withdrew themselves from active politics. It also received lots of criticism, even within the Muslim community in Turkey. So the third reason, we see actually when there is, there is no religious freedom, when there is persecution, when there is oppression in the context of practicing your faith, in some cases, the response is, to be in conflict with state, if not violence. We see lots of cases again in Muslim societies, violence because, and again, although many would read different, the current, let's say, extreme Islamic movements differently, but we cannot deny that actually it is also, in a way, a response to secularism or modernity or form of state. Among them today, we can mention ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Daesh. For this group, it is almost unimaginable to live a religious life in a secular environment. For the Nur community, non-violent struggle was unconditional, and a conflict and violence were no options. Nursi presents the reading of the Risale in the Dershanes as an effective form of jihad to deal with the new challenges. So this is another. The fourth reason is the problem is not just actually that we are in a secular that the Muslims in Turkey, they didn't have institutions, they didn't have madrasas, they didn't have zawiyas, but also because of that it seems that Nursi has foreseen the problems of a secular age, not just in Turkey but also around the globe. So basically in this context he offers a solution. In many Western societies, religious institutions are losing ground. They are not, they don't have the impact as the way they used to have. And in some cases, you see they are completely terminated, like in the context of Turkey. And still, although the dynamics are changing. So in this context, the Dershanes, the spiritual gatherings of the Risale, as a spiritual resource, might be seen as an important model in forming the faith of Muslim believers in secular Turkey, where the religious institutions were shut down. So basically, what is the best way to preserve your faith or Iman? Before it was through the institutions, tekkas, zawiyas, madrasas, but now you don't have it. What do you do? And then the Nur community's answer is actually the Dershanes. The other reason that study on the Dershanes is important. So now we have various perceptions in the West about Islam, right? One of them is, just to give an example, from the United States, actually Muslims have the lowest rate among religious communities, religious groups, even lower than atheists. So basically, in America, it seems many people would prefer an atheist to a Muslim. So what does that mean? Is Muslims they don't have a good image, and one of them is one of the reason actually they associate Islam with extremism. So my point is actually, or they think that Islam is anti-modern, is not compatible with secularism or democracy. So the point is actually the gathering of the Risale defies these perceptions. Actually, it dismantles these perceptions. And not to mention that actually, it is almost difficult, again, in the Western societies to associate Islam with a non-violent civil disobedience. And again, if you think of the context of the Nur community, it is a context that there is religious persecution, there is no religious freedom, but the response is actually a non-violent response. Because Nursi offers the Islamic theology, dealing with Islamic questions, as a form of engaging with these questions as a form of jihad. All right. So the other thing is the interesting now. We should not come to the conclusion that actually this, gathering in a house, in order to, to foster your spirituality, to be a better Muslim, is not uniquely a new thing. Actually, we have many examples in the history of Islam, or in the Quranic and Hadith context. We remember again in one of the presentations, the story of Moses was mentioned. Right? There is a verse in the Quran, وَجَعَلُوا بُيُوتَكُمْ قِبْلَةً. Right? So what does it mean? Turn your houses into turn your houses into a worship place, in a spiritual place, right? So if you can think of their context, it is a persecution context, right? The people of Moses, they were persecuted by Pharaoh, right? Fir'aun, and they sought refuge in a house, right? And you see, this is very similar to the context of the Nur community in Turkey. Another example.
الباقي دقيقتين.
Another example, actually, in the Quran, we have the story of Ashab al-Kahf, right? Kahf, the 7 sleepers, and actually it is interesting in the Risale, this story is mentioned. Is mentioned that they resonate their own experience with the story of the 7 sleepers, Ashab al-Kahf, and they seek, and there is actually one of the letters in the Barla Layıkası, in one of the letters, Küçük Ali, he refers to the same case, that as the 7 sleepers, they sought refuge in the cave, likewise I am seeking refuge in the Risale Nur, and the gatherings. We have also the example of actually Moriscos. This is very interesting. Moriscos in Spain, as you know, during the Inquisition, they were persecuted. They were forced to give up their religion. And actually, in this case of persecution, when there was no religious freedom, houses became their refuge, like in the case of Nur community. So lots of similarities. This is not kind of and we have of course Darul Arqam, right, during the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then again, when there is lots of pressure from the Meccan community, right, from the non-believers, again, what is the refuge? Is Darul Arqam. It is a house basically. And we see a similar context in the Nur community as well. When there is no religious freedom, when you don't have institutions, then the houses become a refuge. So finally, just to conclude, I would say also the Dershanes, and again, this might be provoking, is in a way, the gathering in the Dershanes is in a way is a form of accommodating Islam in a secular environment. So it has been a painful experience really what is the best way to, I mean, can a Muslim live as a believer, as a pious person in a secular environment? Apparently, from Nursi's perspective, yes, it is possible. And actually, the gatherings in the Dershanes can become an important means. Thank you for your attention.